ever catch yourself thinking like, what would the perfect society look like?
Hmm.
Like if you could design it from scratch.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think everyone's pondered that at some point.
Well, turns out we're not alone. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato
Of course.
wrote a whole book about it called Laws, and we're taking a deep dive into it today,
This thing's fascinating.
focusing specifically on Chapter 4, where Plato gets down to brass tacks
Okay.
about building a government that could actually work. Not just some pie-in-the-sky idea.
Right, getting into the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. It's fascinating how he moves beyond just, utopian ideals.
Yeah, he's really grappling with the realities here.
And tackles the nuts and bolts of, power and justice and what it actually means to govern well.
It's not just theoretical, it's like a blueprint for a better society.
So spill the beans. What's the magic formula in Plato's recipe for good governance?
Well, he calls it a mixed government.
Okay.
And you might be surprised to hear it's not about creating some brand new system. Plato was pretty sharp. He realized that no single system is perfect.
Yeah, they all have their downsides.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So his genius lies in blending these seemingly opposite approaches,
Okay.
monarchy and democracy, to take advantage of their strengths and kind of minimize their weaknesses.
It's like he's creating a balancing act.
It's like he's calibrating a scale,
Yeah,
making sure no one element overpowers the others.
I like that analogy.
So you've got monarchy with its potential for decisive leadership and, hopefully wise decision.
Right.
Balanced by democracy and its focus on citizen participation, which acts as a safeguard against tyranny.
Okay, so it's not just about splitting power down the middle 50-50.
Right, there's nuance to it.
What are some of the specific advantages that Plato saw in this approach?
Well, on the monarchy side, Plato really valued that potential for strong, decisive leadership.
Okay.
Imagine, someone at the helm who can make those tough calls
Right.
and guide the ship of state through choppy water.
But they could go overboard with that power.
Exactly. And that's where the democratic element is crucial.
It keeps things in check.
It ensures citizens have a say and prevents things from, veering into tyranny.
It's amazing how Plato recognized that even the wisest, most benevolent ruler could be tempted, by the allure of power.
Absolutely. I mean, power can be intoxicating.
Yeah, it really can.
So Plato seems to understand the inherent flaws in any single system and seeks this nuanced solution that balances competing interests.
To create a more stable and just society.
Exactly.
He wasn't naive about human nature at all.
Not at all.
It's interesting because this idea of a mixed government
Yeah.
is different from what he wrote in his earlier work, The Republic,
Oh, right.
where he championed the idea of a philosopher-king, who's single, all-knowing, perfect ruler. What do you make of that shift in his thinking?
I think it shows a move from idealistic theory to
That's
a more
what-
pragmatic and applicable approach.
I see.
In Laws, he seems to acknowledge that finding that perfect ruler might be a long shot.
Right.
And even if you did find this amazing person, how could you guarantee they'd stay wise and just...
Yeah, power can corrupt even the best of intentions.
Absolutely.
So it's like he's saying, all right, maybe the philosopher-king was a nice idea, but let's be real and design a system that accounts for human fallibility.
I think that's a good way to put it. He's moved beyond the ideal.
Yeah.
And is wrestling with the complexities of actually governing.
And that leads us to another key ingredient in his recipe for good governance, the Constitution.
Right.
Think of it as the rule book.
The framework.
Yeah, the framework that defines how the government operates and makes sure everyone plays by the rules.
Everyone, including those in power.
Yeah. It's not enough to just have a good leader or give people a voice.
Right.
You need a system, a constitution that sets those boundaries, prevents the abuse of power, and ensures the government serves its intended purpose.
It's the foundation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is where Plato's ideas start to feel incredibly relevant to us today.
Absolutely. Thousands of years later.
This emphasis on the rule of law
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of a constitution as a safeguard against tyranny,
It's all there.
it really resonates with modern political systems.
It does.
I mean, think about the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
exactly.
These documents lay out that framework for governance
Thank you.
and protect individual liberties, much like what Plato envisioned.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you wonder, could this mixed government model,
Yeah.
with its checks and balances and emphasis on the rule of law,
Yeah.
could it actually work in today's world?
That's a big question.
What might the challenges be?
Well, that's a question worth exploring.
Okay.
But to really understand the potential and the pitfalls of Plato's model, we need to dig a little deeper into what he meant by virtue.
Okay.
And how he imagined it shaping both individuals and society as a whole.
All right, consider me hooked.
Right.
Let's unpack Plato's ideas about virtue.
Okay.
And how it all fits into his vision of a well-governed society.
Let's do it.
So we're really getting into the meat of it now. With Plato's concept of virtue,
right,
it's not just about structures and laws.
No, not at all.
Like there's this deeper level to it about the purpose of government.
Yeah.
And its role in actually shaping its citizens.
Exactly. Plato was really concerned with the moral character of individuals.
Okay.
And he firmly believed that a good state, a well-governed state, should actively cultivate virtue in its people.
So it's not just about keeping the wheels turning.
Right. It's about creating a society where people are striving to be their best selves.
That's a pretty lofty goal for any government.
Definitely ambitious.
What did Plato see as the connection between individual virtue and a society that flourishes?
He saw a very strong link between the two.
Okay.
For him, a society filled with just and moral people would just naturally thrive.
Okay.
And on the flip side, if people were corrupt and selfish, the state would decline.
Makes sense.
It's like individual virtue was the foundation of a healthy society.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
But how do you actually cultivate virtue through government?
Yeah.
Like, did Plato have some grand plan to turn everyone into saints?
Well, he certainly had ideas. He laid out a system of education and laws that were specifically designed to shape character and instill moral values.
So it's not just about going to school and learning facts.
No, for Plato, education was about so much more than that. It was about developing a strong sense of justice and temperance, courage, all those good things. It was holistic.
So the state takes this very active role in shaping the moral character of its people. It's almost like a gardener tending to their plants.
I like that analogy.
And this focus on virtue.
Yeah.
It ties back into that concept of mixed government.
Right.
Plato believed that by blending monarchy and democracy, you could create a system that was stable and just.
Yes.
But also one that encouraged people to become virtuous.
Exactly. It all works together.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces connect. The structure of the government, its purpose, and this idea of shaping the moral character of the citizens.
It's all interwoven.
It's a complex vision.
Very much so.
And it raises some interesting questions for us today.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like, how much should a government be involved in shaping the morals of its people?
Right.
And where do you draw that line between, promoting virtue and respecting individual freedom?
Big questions.
Those are questions that we're still wrestling with today.
For sure.
We mentioned earlier that Plato's ideas about leadership seem to change between the Republic and laws.
Right.
He seems less idealistic about finding that perfect ruler in laws.
Yeah, he's more grounded.
How does that connect with his emphasis on virtue?
That's a sharp observation.
Thanks.
I think in laws, Plato acknowledges that relying on the virtue of one person, even a philosopher-king, is maybe setting the bar a little too high. Power corrupts, even with the best of intentions.
So instead of putting all his hopes on this one perfect person, he's designing a system that's more resilient.
Exactly.
More realistic.
More grounded in the realities of human nature.
Precisely. And that's where the mixed government shines.
Okay.
By combining monarchy and democracy and creating a strong constitution.
Right.
Plato builds a system that's less reliant on the virtue of a single leader.
Okay.
It's more about a framework that promotes justice and stability.
So even if individuals falter,
the
structure itself helps maintain a virtuous society.
Exactly.
It's like he's building in safeguards and acknowledging that people, even those in power, aren't perfect.
Right.
This focus on systems and structures feels very modern.
I agree.
It's like he's anticipating the challenges of governing in a complex world.
He's ahead of his time in a lot of ways.
His ideas about the rule of law and checks and balances and a constitution that limits the power of any one individual.
These are central to how we think about democracy today.
He definitely moved away from absolute monarchy. Yeah, towards systems that distribute power and hold leaders accountable.
And even his idea of using education to cultivate virtue.
Right.
While maybe a little too top-down for some people today, it speaks to this enduring belief that a well-informed and morally grounded citizenry
Yeah,
is crucial for a healthy society.
absolutely.
We might not agree on the details,
Right.
but that underlying idea that education shapes character.
It's a powerful one.
And I think most importantly, Plato's way of thinking, his relentless search for truth,
Yeah.
and his willingness to tackle those tough questions.
It's a model for all of us.
He challenges us to look beyond the easy answers,
To really think critically.
to consider different viewpoints,
And to keep questioning our own beliefs.
about justice, governance, the good life.
Oh, the big stuff.
It's like he's giving us this philosophical toolkit,
A set of mental tools.
yeah, equipped with reason, critical thinking, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
To help us navigate the world.
And he's encouraging us to use these tools,
Yeah.
to analyze our own political systems, to see their strengths and weaknesses, and to try to create a more just and equitable world.
It's about striving for something better.
He's not giving us all the answers,
Yeah.
but he's showing us how to ask the right questions.
Exactly. That's the beauty of engaging with these classic texts.
Yeah.
They challenge us to step outside of our own time and place.
And to really think differently.
To consider different perspectives.
And to join this ongoing conversation
That spans centuries and cultures.
about how we can build a better future.
Plato might not have all the answers for us today.
Yeah.
But his ideas give us a framework for tackling some of our biggest challenges.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Plato's laws,
Okay.
we want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question.
Right?
Imagine you could sit down with Plato today, like over a cup of coffee,
Okay.
and have a chat about the state of modern politics.
I like it.
What do you think he would find most surprising?
Oh, that's a good one.
What would he admire, and what would he find most troubling?
That's a fascinating exercise.
It is.
Trying to bridge that gap between ancient wisdom and modern realities.
It's a reminder that the search for a just and well-governed society, it never really ends.
It's ongoing.
It's a conversation that stretches across time and cultures.
And Plato's laws is just one voice in that conversation.
But it's a voice that continues to resonate with us today.
It does.
Keep thinking about these ideas.
Keep exploring.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive. Okay, so let's tackle this last piece of the puzzle.
Right.
We've been breaking down Plato's mixed government, his emphasis on virtue,
Yeah.
and how his thinking shifted away from that philosopher-king idea.
Right.
But the big question is,
Yeah.
how do these ideas that came out of ancient Greece
Right.
hold up when you look at all the craziness of modern politics?
That's the million-dollar question.
It really is.
It's something that scholars debate all the time.
Yeah,
Even those who've spent their whole lives studying Plato.
I can imagine.
On the one hand, you could say
No.
his focus on virtue.
Okay.
The idea that a well-crafted constitution is like the answer to all our problems. Even his views on leadership,
Yeah.
they feel kind of out of touch with the complexities of modern democracy.
It's like we're trying to force this ancient Athenian model
Yeah.
onto a world that's changed so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. The world has gone through centuries of political and social evolution.
The core principles might still resonate, but actually applying them gets a lot trickier.
Exactly.
But then again, you could argue
Yeah.
that Plato's main concerns,
Like,
the dangers of tyranny,
no.
the importance of checks and balances,
Yeah.
this desire for a just and stable society,
Mhm.
those are as relevant today as they were back then.
I think so too. Human nature hasn't really changed that much.
Yeah, sure.
People are still capable of great things,
Yeah.
but also of, corruption and bad decisions.
So it's less about copying Plato's model exactly,
Right.
and more about taking those timeless principles
Mm-hmm.
and figuring out how to apply them to our world today.
Exactly. Like finding the echoes of his ideas in our own systems.
Okay.
For instance,
Yeah.
Plato's emphasis on the rule of law
Okay.
and the need to limit the power of leaders.
Mm-hmm.
That really resonates with modern democracy.
It does.
We see it reflected in how we distribute power,
Yeah.
how we have independent courts,
Right.
and how we protect individual rights.
It's all connected.
It is.
And even his idea of using education to cultivate virtue,
Mm-hmm.
which might seem a little too controlling to some people today.
Yeah, maybe a bit paternalistic.
It still points to this idea that
Yeah.
a well-informed and morally grounded citizenry
Mm-hmm.
is essential for a healthy society.
I think that's something most people would agree with.
We may not agree on all the details,
Right.
but that basic idea that education shapes character,
It's powerful.
it really is.
And maybe even more importantly,
Yeah.
Plato's way of thinking.
His method.
His relentless pursuit of truth. Yeah. His willingness to wrestle with tough questions.
It's inspiring.
He's setting an example for all of us.
He's challenging us to look beyond those easy answers.
Yeah.
To consider different points of view and to keep questioning what we believe about justice.
About good governance.
About what it means to live a good life.
About the big questions.
It's like he's giving us this toolkit.
Yeah, a philosophical toolkit.
Filled with reason and critical thinking.
And a good dose of skepticism.
To help us navigate the complexities of the world.
And to make it a better place.
He's encouraging us to use these tools.
To analyze our own political systems.
Yeah.
To see their strengths and weaknesses. And to strive for a more just and equitable world.
It's about never settling for the status quo.
Exactly. It's about always pushing for something better.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Plato's laws, we want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
I'm ready.
Imagine you could have a conversation with Plato today.
Okay.
What do you think he'd find most surprising about modern politics? What would he admire?
That's a tough one.
And what would he find most troubling?
It's a great way to bridge the gap.
It is.
Between ancient wisdom and the realities of our world today.
It reminds us that the search for a just and well-governed society, it's an ongoing journey.
It never ends.
It's a conversation that continues across centuries and across cultures.
And Plato's Laws is just one contribution to that conversation.
But it's a powerful one.
It's a voice that still speaks to us today.
It does. So keep thinking about these ideas.
Keep exploring.
And keep questioning.
Until next time on The Deep Dive.